warm welcome to this 50% seminar. Welcome to Stockholm University of the Arts and the 50% seminar of PhD student here, Paula Torres Núñez del Prado. This seminar has the title Knotting Networks, Soft Infrastructures for Decentralized Futures. And during this seminar, Paula explores the concept of smart fiber arts, its relation to sound, and the role of human computer interaction in performance setups. Paula's point of departure for this seminar has been the study of the pre-Columbian devices called keepers, a tactile chord-based data storing system as a way to engage with a different lineage in the development of human technologies, one that sprouts from an essentially fiber-based origin. In her 50% seminar, Paula speculates on how Andean kippers may have functioned as tactile decentralized information systems. This in turn will take us to revisit peer-to-peer technologies, edge AI, soft infrastructures, and possibilities of divergent government systems through a decentralized system design. This seminar will shortly begin with a sound demo in which the audience is given the opportunity to participate in an interaction of the keeper by using an app set up with via 4 mobile phones in this room. The demo also involves a remote interaction with the audience here in the hegemonizing technologies of capture conference happening simultaneously at the Critical Media Lab in Basel, Switzerland, where the examination is streamed as part of the event. Go ahead.
Yes, so you can see, I don't know if you are able to test in Basel, but actually if you are, what is being done here should influence your sound because the data is being sent simultaneously among all the people. I'll just come closer so you can listen to what's going on. So maybe you can all decide if you want in one note and see what happens. And then maybe you can go back and see what happens when you actually detect all of them. It might also happen that it gets a bit, the actual graphic, the square that points out the not being detected, takes some time to appear. It's because of all the data that it's passing simultaneously among the phones. Basically, what this Kipu follows the Inca coding system. So actually, the phone can detect how many turns each of the note has, following the Inca system. So maybe also you can learn how this system works by seeing the number that it's detected, no? I think they've understood.
Every phone detects a different sound.
I'll explain the system
Okay.
soon, because actually the point here is not as much the sound, but the system. The sound is serving as a sort of marker or a way to monitor the system, and that's what I will talk about now. Okay. So I'll talk about the app now, the background, why this app exists, and what I'm aiming for. Because let's say like right now is this, I want to share this prototype. that if you know my practice, you understand that it's quite associated. I've been working around associating notes with code and sound in various other works, prototypes or projects, related to the Kipu. And I wanted to situate it within that research line. But there's a divergence, and actually this has to do with how the app works internally. But first I'll introduce them. Basically, I mean, the one that you see now, this Kipu is actually the one that it's in Switzerland, in the critical media lab. And these are the values that were encoded in the Kipu. As you can see, I mean, if you've been able to observe, it actually depends on the turns of each note. So you can actually count them, with the fingers. But yes, I'm interested in sort of, in this case, to use technologies that are easy to access, that by now are commonplace, and that don't require, that's usually have a lower cost, no? As in the case of a phone. If you've known my performance Kipu coding, I use a computer for this, and even if it's quite portable, obviously with a phone, it makes it even more it can be accessed by more people, no? So this is what's this talk is also part of, for one side, the Ways of Knowing seminar, and also the de-hegemonizing technologies of capture. Technologies of capture here are predominantly understood as Western anthropocentric concepts for facilitating linear progress, control, and profit within a colonial capitalist model. And these are words that I would like you to keep in mind: progress, control, and profit within a colonial capitalist model. And the actual internal workings of the app have to do with this. So this is about my research, the whole of it, the tangibility of the digital. So you can see actually one of the devices that I developed before starting the research here in Escojo. It's being shown in Kulturhuset. And this was actually a device that I use for performances, but right now is presented as an interactive piece there. It has been done so before. In one of these places has been San Andrés de Tupicocha, where they still preserve the Kipu tradition, and you can see kids quite enjoyed using the Kipu, and because they are very familiar to the Kipu, they could also learn how to play it quite fast. And you can see the knot of knots, or the Tupicocha knot there, which is the way how in San Andrés de Tupicocha they keep their quipus, no, that are not actually pre-Columbian, but belong to that tradition. They've been repaired over the years, so they are usually referred as either colonial and/or Republican, from Republican times. Just to keep it short, my research materializes the digital, grounding it in bodies, textures, rhythms, and collective sensing. So just to recap, this is basically what has to do with my 30%. This paper and this concept called Andean, that I named Andean audiotactility, that refers to the sensory logic of Andean knowledge systems, where tactile and auditory forms of perception, such as tying, weaving, and sound, seem to have served as primary modes of encoding, transmitting, and experiencing information in pre-Hispanic times, challenging the dominance of visual-centric epistemologies. Now, that doesn't mean that I need to refer on the importance of textile in the Andean pre-Columbian traditions. That even so, of course, the visual was important because they were colorful and so on. the actual architectures of the textiles were quite advanced. So they had developed different type of weaving techniques that actually would, for example, wouldn't take the textile as bidimensional, but actually three-dimensional. So you can even find samples of basically small textile sculptures woven, no, that are also including textiles and so on, or textiles that have two sides, and these two sides have a positive and a negative side, for example. No? So this is a graphic as well that you might have seen from last time. And this at the time, this was more empirical knowledge. That's what I had perceived. Sort of a conclusion of how Andean peoples would perceive the reality associated to sound and to tactility. But it turns out that actually there's already a concept that is quite relevant within anthropology, and the anthropological branch that studies the Andes, and that is the concept of verticality. And this has been sort of defined simultaneously by this researcher based in the US and by a Bolivian researcher as well. So I'll start first by John Mura and his proposal of the vertical archipelago. And so actually this is something that you can be a direct witness once you go to the Andes and go to communities and recognize how agriculture is distributed in the different ecological partitions, no, of this vertical side of the mountains. What happens is, like, since this is usually so steep, climate changes quite fast, and that also allows a different type of agriculture in a somewhat nearby area. But actually, Mura was used the case of the Lupaca kingdom, which is an Aymara kingdom. So this is a kingdom or a community that was within the area of the Titicaca Lake in pre-Columbian times up till the colony. And they had according to him, they would sort of apply this idea of vertical archipelago in quite an extensive area, in such a way they would have parcels in the coast and in the Amazonia as well. And that's why he gave this name, because in between there could be other communities living, and these were, you know, kilometers and kilometers away, like days of walking actually. So in this sense, this was relevant because it would show an alternative economic logistics or logics and that would differ from Western spatial models. And this is, again, something that I want you to keep in mind, this sort of approach, divergence of the spatial model that we here are more used to, and that is very much based by now on the screen. So now, going around the Quipu and how the Quipu could embed all of this social structure and information, there is this, well, this is also from colonial times. Blas Valera did this graphic in which he would map the Seca system, and I'll explain what this is, with a Quipu and its nodes. So the Seca system was what the Inca would use to sort of distribute or mark the different wakas or sacred places all throughout the Tawantinsuyo, the Inca state, really. And this is interesting because, part of the method of including populations in this state, some people call it the empire, was by in the deal, let's say it was offered that the sacred places would be included as part of the totality of sacred places of the Tawantinsuyo. So this was the sort of way to map all of these sacred places was radially with the Cusco in the center, and then each one would be different. Each one of these sacred places would be like knots on each one of these ropes that would be coming from this center, which is Cusco. And this is quite an interesting mapping because it does reflect something that personally I find more particular, or very particular from both the Andean and Amazonian areas in South America, which is the inclination for polysemia. So one thing can be many things, and this has to do a lot with patterns, really. So, yes, departing from this, I start thinking about divergent lineage of soft infrastructures and social technologies. And I'll just read this. Something far more important than numerical values might be embedded in the architectures of the Quipu. That is, the integral Andean social structure, based in the Ayu as its most elemental node, the Ayu being the extended family. And because I won't say this is exclusive in the Inca times, but in the Andean region, it's the core, or the let's say individuals are not what are counted by Ayus or these extended families. Within this system, the individual is not really taken as such, or not even counted in census. It was always part of an Ayu. Spreads how based in the Ayu as its most elemental node, spreads through the land as a radial map in Inca times, with the Seque system looking like a Quipu. The Quipu was an example of how soft infrastructures, here understood as governance, economical, sociopolitical, and redistributed structures, etc., shapes technological development, and how such technological development ends up reshaping the same fabric of society. This is also something that I want you to keep in mind. And Murra actually comes up with an example of this, on how once the Quipu was more and more used by the Inca actually, and it, given that it was basically on base 10, eventually the communities, the settlements, were started being redistributed as well in base 10. So the actual towns were redesigned, so to include 1,000, 10,000, and so on, because of the Quipu. And this is a site, but this necessity of constant subdividing conflicted with the military and administrative efficiency took us that it ended up that in a certain moment the node system of the Quipu was tested as a decimal system, forcing ethnic groups and family groups to follow a model that was less random and more rational. And it is like this that groups were moved around to be grouped in base 10. So the social structure came up, was sort of crystallized in the quipu, and the quipu also changed society. And this is something that, of course, sounds quite familiar to us now. So yeah, we have these images generated by AI. But yeah, I mean, I will talk quite much about this AI, and as some of you know, I do this. I'm a bit skeptic on the term, but yeah. So the question at this point would be: so are we talking? It's really the Inca quipus were a centralized technology, and they were, but at the same time, they could not be, and they weren't always centralized. You need to understand that the quipu as a technology, maybe not in the Inca sort of not only in the Inca encoding system or the model or type of quipu that was used there, which was base 10. These aren't the only type of quipus that have been found. Before that, within the Wari times, that this was previously than the Inca, they also had their own quipus, and they don't seem to follow the same structure. They seem to be more complex, but we unfortunately don't have enough samples, so it's not fully understood how they were encoding information, not even we need a numerical. But there is, even within the Inca times, there's some references for the Inca cosmologies. You need to understand the concept of duality and quadripartition. I won't go much into this, but I can say that everything was divided into 2 or 4, or starting from 2 and then to 4. So every town, especially Cusco, was split in 2, no? The above part and the below part. So in some texts, there's been certain references that also governance was split in 2. Some of them even talking, some researchers and some documents seem to indicate that there could be even potentially 2 groups of rulers as well. So yeah, this sort of pairing, and then going towards the 4 will also be found in the way the quipus were being organized by accountants. So yes, this has to do with duality, and then why anarchy? Because the quipu as a technology seem to have persisted even after empires fell. So that's an example of a Wari quipu. As you can see, the structure is quite different. And the quipus continued use by indigenous populations during and after colonial times, even after being outlawed, parallel to colonial and republican state rule, could indicate that a central power system wasn't really required for Andean governance systems to continue. I, in fact, would incline towards this postulate because these traditions and these local roles from the community and so on by now still continue independent to the Peruvian state in such a way that they can collide with the demands of the state as such. So in that way we can see the quipus as a tool of resistance, or for resistance. There is some evidence suggesting that Andeans composed quipus songs and not text, well, sorry, and information like epistles during the rebellions against the Spaniards to ensure secrecy and affirm cultural legitimacy, which is one of the hypotheses behind or that explain why first, once the Spaniards invaded, the quipus, since they seem to be such an efficient system for accounting and administration, were kept and included as part of the colonial system. But after 100 years or so, they became outlawed. And that's why, and that's because it seems that the Spaniards could recognize that certain information was being passed around that they couldn't decode, and that was perceived as dangerous. So after the Tupac Amaru second rebellion, Andean customs were repressed in general and attempted to be erased. And this also included the quipu. But even if they were outlawed, except they were still authorized to be used within the church to sort of annotate the sins. But beyond that, they weren't really accepted anymore and not included among colonial administration. But even if outlawed, quipus continue to be used by Andean populations actually up to date. Even if by now, in most places in which they are used, especially the ones that follow the Inca encoding system, they are more used in a symbolic manner, not really to encode information anymore. So, going back to this idea of verticality, this researcher from Bolivia, Ramiro Condarco, simultaneously to Murra, came up with this idea of interzonal symbiosis. It referred to the collaborative use of ecological zones at different elevations in mountainous landscapes. While parallel to this, Murra was proposing the vertical control of a maximum of ecological levels, which I referred to before. So these both hypotheses that were referring to simultaneous management of ecosystems in a wide range of mountain elevations. Again, I want you to understand this so you can incorporate how or why the technology developed was also different. And then later, both authors proposed a new term, ecosymbiotic complementarity, which combine the management of ecosystems at different elevations and a set of social relations. So actually, this particular way of adapting to geography ended up also reformulating the social relations in a feedback loop, sort of, no? The ecosymbiotic complementarity theory explains an Andean model of pre-capitalist societies organized in confederate empires that expanded their territories to use a high diversity of resources. And this occurred when people exchange, or the complementary occurred when people exchange resources extracted from ecosystems at different elevations, and when small farmers migrated with crops to other lands to pay tribute to owners. Condarco then proposes that unlike an economy specialized in a uniform microclimate that allows satisfying all needs, the form of survival in the Andes corresponds rather to a macro adaptation, which involves exploiting different resources by creating everywhere human relations aimed at social cohesion and economic unification. This is a paper that I'm presenting in a couple of weeks in International Symposium on Electronic Arts. And it's relevant to what I referred before. This has to do with my research on lichens and interactivity. And it critiques the flattening inherent in dominant technological representations of the planetary within a Western framework, no? So it's a critique to that. And by drawing on from the colonial perspectives and ecological awareness, it explores non-Western paradigms that seek to foster symbiotic relationships, both within human cultures and with the natural world. So I'm interested in this because the model reflects a radically different social topology from the Western one, sprouting from a land contiguous model of statehood or economic organization. Instead of a centralized or territorially continuous structure, Andean societies form non-contiguous, vertically arrayed networks that prioritize ecological complementary over spatial uniformity. And this takes us maybe to the now. So the centralized global economy is what we here are currently part of, the capitalist market inclined economy. But this is not so everywhere, and actually even here in local environments, we probably have been witnessed that this is not so. So in this graphic, you can see how this sort of the traditional market and the capitalist market affect each other. Obviously, more the capitalist market influences or affects more the traditional market as a local and multiple distributed economy, but they sort of coexist, no? And this could also be presented as a parallel to what I was referring before, how communities in the Andes have organization systems that exist parallel to the Peruvian state. And the same thing goes on nowadays in what refers to economic systems. So thinking about this, I started wondering how could we think about a technology that actually would question this central model. Again, I'm not the only one questioning this. This is actually, this has quite much, has a legacy, but I'm not referring to other examples except what I'm showing here, because I'm intentionally departing from a different lineage of technological development, as you know, from the Kipu and from Andean worldviews and so on. So there's two terms that you will see. One of them is Aini, which is a term in Quechua that refers to reciprocity as a socio-political structure, which was the base of the Inca economy system and social system as well, but this comes from before. And the Mita, which is labor as tax. So this was of Inca origin. So the people living within the Inca Empire or the Inca state would pay tax by working. And you can see here these graphics sort of show the different, the usual client-server architecture opposed to the peer-to-peer architecture. And I did a little parallel with the interpretation of the quipus before, this one showing the sort of anarchic structure, which there's no central system, but still the system works. So actually for quipu values, the app that you tested, it's a hybrid peer-to-peer. I used the hybrid peer-to-peer because it was more stable for now. Again, this is a prototype. But it also potentially allows, even if there is a central server, there's no major operation going on in the server. All operations are happening in your phone. And then numbers, well, data, but basically just the numbers are being sent to the server, and the server distributes it to the other phones. But the server is not doing anything beyond this. The server in question is just a Raspberry Pi. So actually, the technology that I'm using is quite, quite accessible. The phones that you tested are quite old phones, and I'll probably extend a bit more then, because there's still some more to talk. But yes, I'll try to. Yeah. So yes. Oh. So the characteristic of this is that it's decentralized. The only central aspect is the signaling, but the data exchange is decentralized. There's this property called decentralized inference, the belief, which is a Bayesian logic that I'll explain really fast now, runs independently on each peer, in this case each phone. The edge first, meaning that the computation is done on device, and it's basically cooperative. And knowledge, here understood like emergent probabilistic understanding of pattern transitions, is built collectively. What happened? Yes. So these are the technologies involved. I'll show them really fast now. I have developed this in a collaboration because it's been quite demanding. And again, this is for you to understand what's going on. Again, keep in mind this bias belief engine, because that's what I'll explain. Again, I just will show you this really fast. And actually, this project started because maybe a couple of years ago, or a year and a half ago, I started thinking about doing a parallel in between blockchain technologies and what I call not chain. So actually, I was wondering how one could develop technologies based on the Kipu, and the particularity of the Kipu, which is that according to researchers, accountants will not keep, there wasn't one accountant per town, but 4 or more than one, in such a way that each one will annotate information, census data, accounting, etc., and independently, in such a way that there would be 4 copies of the same Kipu. Well, that's interesting. And it has been found. Yeah, it has been found portions of Kipus in other Kipus, which would support this theory that for this researcher called Light Jacobsen, he saw a potential double entry system. But that array was rising, or it was because values were often recorded both by type and by destination or purpose, mirroring the two-sided recording in European double entry systems, debit and credit. If you've done your own taxes, you might be familiar with this. So yeah, actually there's many Kipus that it has been found that the information it's included in the others, and this made me think about blockchain technologies as well when you replicate copies for security. Now, this idea of thinking about the potentials of blockchain technologies for parallel governance and also economic systems is not exclusively mine. I actually didn't know about this, but I learned about this project rather recently. The project of Jassan Khalili and Sami Kaldi, Palestinian activists who started a project called The Question of Funding, which is an art collective that presented this idea in Documenta 15. And it basically has to do, I'll just read this, while being members in the when Documenta 15, our interest in liberating money grew. In Documenta 15, others referred to it as transvestment, while we call it liberation of money from hegemonic systems into another which liberates the money from donor conditions. They were contextualizing it within donations for arts and donations, in this case, for Palestine. It was an interest to return the essence of money as a medium of exchange rather than a medium of speculation and financial industry. Neoliberal structures such as finance took over the practices of economy. We wanted to address the economy as a political practice. Economy is about interdependence. Money should not be wealth. The wealth of a community is the existing resources of a community. We saw money only as a medium of exchange rather than where wealth is stored. And then again, go back, after reading this, to the idea of Inca economy and Inca society, in which individuals are not rewarded for their labor in money or goods or services. Instead, they are rewarded with a warranty of future mutual assistance and social standing. And so this idea of mutual aid and reciprocity was the base of society. This is the name of Daira, the blockchain proposed. And it's formulated as a medium that uses blockchain technology for circulating communal economic value. Communal economic value. And they state that communal debt isn't a credit or debit, it's not financial value, but rather it is an agreed upon understanding between certain community members that they need each other and support each other in different ways and manners to exist and survive in this world. So it's a shared asset. So I started thinking, going back to the Quipu. Well, in Tupicocha, I commented that actually, at least in the Tupicochan tradition, it seems that the knot actually would encode a task to do by the community. So when someone does it, the knot would be untied. So this idea in depth could very much be embedded in the Quipus. So I was playing with the word annotated. So I started wondering, this is how I came up with the app. How to capture emerging values through social interaction and exchange. Started from the opposition in between relational and extractive value. In capitalism, value is abstracted, quantified, and extracted from labor, land, or data to be accumulated by individuals or institutions. So how to ground value in social relations and reciprocity, and not in scarcity or surplus. How to mirror Andean notions of AINI, mutual aid and reciprocity, where value is always relational or temporal. How to capture the emergence of value through exchange and not as something taken or owned. So I found this paper as market-based, which, again, I won't go now much into what Bayesian network is, but basically it's an algorithm that in this case was used to sort of be able to predict certain market changes and so on, no? And so I thought, what if I used the same idea but to do the complete opposite? For doing sort of barter-based then, a distributed emergent economy of belief and exchange. And this is what I've used. This is the algorithm that actually makes the sound possible. It's called Bayesian multinomial transition learner. And this, it's in between statistics and also machine learning. And just to explain fast, it learns the probability of transitioning from one knot value to another over time. If a phone sees the sequence 352, it tries to learn how likely it is to go from 3 to 5 or from 5 to 2 and so on. Instead of just counting how often transitions happen, it uses prior knowledge, a small assumed count for every possible transition to avoid bias or overconfidence, especially early on. This is known as smoothing. So even transitions it hasn't seen, yet have non-zero probability, are included in this and are smooth as well. Because at each step, the next node could be any of the several discrete values, in this case 1 to 9, this is modeled as a multinomial distribution, like a rolling weighted dice. Each phone builds a model of what tends to follow what based on shared data from other phones. This is what I call belief model and drives the sound output. So the system sounds out its collective inference in real time. The belief model, it's a probabilistic structure that represents how likely each node value, 1 from 9, is to follow another based on prior observations shared across devices. So the question is the app running collective experience across users' devices into collective belief as a kind of emergent, non-centralized memory that can drive behavior like sound generation or social bartering signals? So belief in classical Bayesian theory is a subjective probability distribution representing our uncertainty about something. In the app, it's a learned transition probability. Say, given that I just saw a node X, how likely is node Y to come next? It's built and updated incrementally using Bayesian smoothing to avoid overconfidence. It represents a shared memory, emerging values, or collective expectations across devices in the system. Each phone is not just guessing randomly, but making informed predictions based on observed sequences. So in that way, I aim for Kipu values to be a decentralized system for value emergence and communal inference expressed as sound for now, where devices participate in a soft peer-to-peer barter network of sorts. Inspired by the Kipu and Andean value systems, it serves as a prototype to model an utopian non-monetary economy where belief, memory, and value are co-constructed rather than imposed. Unlike market-based Bayesian models like market-based, which simulate equilibrium through supply and demand, Kipu values treats each node devices, the mobiles, as an active embodied agent in a barter-based inference, reasoning from observed evidence mesh. Nodes receive and send symbolic inputs using a Bayesian multimodal transition learner with smoothing to update probabilistic models of sequence and generate sonic responses. It is a sonic generation prototype that aims towards a post-capitalist speculative infrastructure for embedding collective sense-making, reciprocity, and shared becoming within the framework of edge and mobile computing as technologies that pursue low cost, accessibility, and decentralization.